Welcome! Today Richard learns Sonic Roll, a 1 to 4 player game by Anthony Thorpe, published by Kess. The evil Dr. Eggman is up to his old antics again. It's up to Sonic and his friends to put an end to his dastardly plans once and for all. Roll and draft your dice to speed through the zone and take out Dr. Eggman's army of Badniks. What you waiting for? Time to show that Eggman who's boss. The goal of the game is to bring the end boss health down to 0 before one player's health or time runs out. To set up, choose a zone to play. For first-time players, the Green Hill Zone is what is recommended, so gather the Act board and place it in the center of the play area with Act 1 face up. On the reverse side of the Act board is the boss for that zone. Take the boss attack card that matches the back of the Act board. We can see that Heavy King has 2 cards. But for Green Hill Zone, let's take Egg Robo and place it by the Act board. When it comes to boss pattern cards, although there appears to be 5 different stacks, nevertheless take all boss pattern cards, shuffle them, and place them by the Act board. Next, take the stack of corresponding zone cards. So to set up Green Hill, we will take the Green Hill cards. Then count out a number of cards based on player count. For a 1 or 2 player game, count 8 cards. For a 3 player game, 9 cards. For a 4 player game, 10 cards. Place the remaining cards back in the box. They will not be used this game. Shuffle the stack of Act cards and place the stack next to the Act board. Next, take 3 of those cards and place them by the top, middle, and bottom sections of the Act board. Now let's set up the Badnik cards for that zone. We can see there are 4 decks, one for Green Hill Zone, Stardust Speedway Zone, Lava Reef Zone, and Chemical Plant Zone. So take the cards for the zone you are setting up, shuffle them, and place them by the Act board. Take 7 time tokens, place those by the Act board. Shuffle the power-up deck, and place that next to the zone board. Next, shuffle the bonus stage tiles, and place them with the blue sphere showing in a 4x4 grid. Next, let's shuffle together the Chaos Emeralds, and place that stack next to the bonus stage tiles. Now it's time to choose a character, and note that character dashboards are double-sided, so they have a more thorough explanation about their role actions. So take a character dashboard and place it in your own play area. Everyone gets 3 life tokens and 1 boost token. And note, if a player chooses to play as Sonic, be sure to give them the Sonic token. And give each player a double-sided player aid. Fastest player goes first. In Sonic Roll, 1 to 4 players run, jump, and spin their way through each zone as Sonic and his friends, racing to stop Dr. Eggman from building his evil empire. If time runs out or any player loses all their lives, it's game over for everybody. At the end of each zone, players can tally their points to see who got the most. To start their turn, players choose one of 3 roll actions listed on their character dashboard. So for example, if we chose the Super Peel Out action, we would take 6 blue dice. So let's take a moment now to learn about the different dice types. At the bottom of each character dashboard, we can see a Dice Quick Guide. With blue dice, you may spend another die without re-rolling. So normally, after spending a die, players must re-roll their dice before being able to spend another one. However, with blue dice, you do not need to re-roll before you can spend another die. We can see a yellow die is referred to as a jump die, and you gain a ring when you spend it. And that's in addition to any normal rewards a player would receive. And then there's red spin dice, which are useful against Badniks. As well, keep an eye out for the effects that come with the roll actions. We can see that there's a roll effect, a re-roll effect, a spend effect, and an avoid effect. A roll effect only happens on the initial roll. It does not happen on the re-roll. Re-roll effects are effects that happen after the dice have been re-rolled. A spend effect occurs after a die has been spent, and avoid effects allow you to manipulate the dice. Now let's move into the structure of a player's turn. A player's turn consists of 4 steps: the roll action step, the spending step, the reroll step, and the end turn step. At the start of a player's turn, a player must roll dice to build their dice pool. Let's use Sonic's spin dash for our example. And on the reverse side of character dashboards are more thorough explanations. So it says to roll a red and a blue die. If no numbers in your dice pool match, roll another red and blue die. Repeat until at least 2 results in your dice pool match. And do it as many times as it takes, as opposed to a specifically given amount of times. So we would take a red and blue die, roll them, and we can see at this point they do not match. So we would take another red and blue die, roll those, and see that even those do not match anything. So we would take another red and blue die, roll those, and now we have a match. So now this is our complete dice pool, thus ending our initial roll. Next is the spending step, and you can spend dice on either a zone card or a badnik. Next is the reroll step. As established, if you have blue dice, you are not required to reroll the dice. With the other colors, however, if you spend 1 die, you must reroll. Remember to check for damage on a reroll. I will go into more detail about that later. After spending a die, reroll the dice and return to the spend step. Next is the end turn step. If the current player no longer has dice in their dice pool, play simply passes to the next player clockwise. If a player re-rolls their dice pool but are unable to spend a die, they must take damage, which I will get to in a bit. But after spending a die, if a player chooses to not re-roll their remaining dice pool, that player must take a time token, then discard the remainder of their dice pool, and play passes to the next player clockwise. And if all time tokens are taken, all players lose. Now let's move on to learning about zone cards. Each zone card has a number of challenges that must be cleared to progress. Each column is referred to as a challenge, and challenges are completed one at a time. So to complete a challenge, the player whose turn it currently is chooses 1 die to place on a zone card. Zone cards are completed moving from left to right. So I could not place this die over here, for example. It must be here, as no challenge has been completed yet. When it comes to white spaces, any color of die may be on that space as long as the number matches. Once the reward has been completed for this space, we would then move on to this space. We can see that there is a blue 6 and a bumper, so we would choose which challenge we wished to overcome. If we chose the blue 6, of course we would need a blue 6. A red or yellow would not be able to complete that. For a bumper, it is possible to put any die there. However, with bumpers, once a number has been placed on the first one, every other bumper after that must match the same number. A different set of bumpers can be a different number. Once a challenge has been cleared, players receive the associated reward. So in this case, 4 rings. And if you have a choice between challenges, you receive the reward closest to the challenge you accepted. So in this case, you would receive a boost token, or in this case, you would receive a time token. Sometimes the next challenge you do depends on which path you take. So if we took the lower bumper path, we would put a 3, we would need another 3 and another 3 before we get to the 4. However, if we played the higher path, we would then skip down to the 4 as our next challenge that we must overcome. And players are allowed to freely switch between which cards they place their dice on. When the last challenge on a zone card is completed, that player takes the zone card and places it in their play area. Next, they receive the reward listed on the act board for completing that route. Now let's take the time to go through all the rewards and the associated mechanics. For a regular rings icon, collect that amount of rings. When rings are collected, they go into a player's held ring pile. Rings are worth 10 points at the end of a game. And if you take damage, you would normally lose a life token. However, if you have held rings, you would lose those instead. For Star Post, a player is able to choose if they wish to move rings from the held ring position to a saved ring position. And when moving from a held ring position to a saved ring position, all rings must be saved at that time. If a player saves 5 or more rings at once, they automatically go to the bonus stage. I will get to what the bonus stage is in a bit. The power-up symbol means to draw a power-up card. When you draw a power-up card, it goes into effect immediately. With some cards, simply gain the bonus, then discard the card. Some cards remain in effect until the player receives damage, or has to discard the power-up card at the end of the player's current turn. And shield cards have a special ability which remain in effect until the player takes damage. When players take damage, they would normally lose a life token, unless they have held rings, in which case they would lose those. Unless they have a shield, in which case they would lose the shield first. And players can only have one shield at a time. So if they were to draw a second shield, they must choose which one they wish to keep and discard the other one. For Boost, gain a Boost token. If a player has a boost token, they may spend that token to re-roll their dice pool. A player can use a boost token after an initial roll, but that counts as a re-roll, so they are now vulnerable to Badnik attacks, which I will get to in a bit. But note that a boost token cannot be used to avoid a hazard die. For black hazard dice, take that number of black dice, roll them, and if any results match your dice pool, you must take damage. A boost token cannot be used when encountering hazard dice. For gain a die, choose a die of any of the 3 colors, roll it, and add it to your dice pool. For lose a die, choose a die to lose from your dice pool. For time token, take a time token and place it in your play area. And remember, if the final time token is taken, all players lose. For Big Ring, you get to enter the Blue Sphere bonus zone, which we will go into right now. And this is the bonus stage. The goal of the bonus stage is to find the Chaos Emerald. To do that, flip over one tile with a blue sphere. If it is a red sphere, collect the reward indicated, and then resume normal play. If the blue sphere tile you flip over is a bumper, receive the indicated reward, then flip over another blue sphere tile, collect that reward, and so forth. When you do flip over the tile that has the Chaos Emerald, draw a Chaos Emerald card. A Chaos Emerald is placed in the play area of the one who found it. On your turn, you can exhaust any number of Chaos Emeralds to gain their power. We can see on this card, for example, we would gain 2 red dice, and we could set 1 to any number we wished instead of rolling it. We would still need to roll the other one. And now we have more dice to choose from. And a Chaos Emerald's power can only be used once per game. When it is time for a player to re-roll their dice pool, the effect of the Chaos Emerald comes to an immediate end. You may still use the dice you gained. Once the Chaos Emerald has been found, return all the tiles back to the blue sphere side, shuffle them, and build a new 4x4 grid for the next person who enters the bonus stage. And finally, gain a Badnik card. So let's talk about Badniks right now. Badniks are gained by individual players and placed in their play area. Up to a maximum of 3 Badniks can be held by one player. When you gain a Badnik card, draw a card for yourself, and choose another player that has fewer than 3 Badniks to also draw a Badnik. And each player places the Badnik in their play area. So if all players have 3 Badniks, no more Badniks can be drawn. If you need to draw a Badnik, but there are no Badniks to draw, take the discard pile, shuffle that together, and use that as your new draw pile. There are two ways to deal with the Badniks. Use a spin die, which frees the animal inside, gaining you a token, which are worth 20 points each at the end of the game, or avoid them by using the appropriate die. You gain no reward this way, but after taking either action, discard the card. When a player re-rolls their dice, they are open to attack from a Badnik, and it is only on the re-roll that you are open to attack from a Badnik, not on the initial roll. If on a re-roll, one of the re-rolled dice matches a Badnik attack, in this case a number 6 of any color, the player is attacked and must take the penalty of the attack, in this case damage. Taking damage means to lose all the held rings they have, so they keep all their saved rings. However, if players have a shield in effect, they would lose that shield instead. Or if they had nothing else to lose, they would have to flip one of their life tokens over to the death side. When one player's final life token is flipped over to the death side, all players lose. If a player has gained a boost token, it can re-roll dice to hopefully avoid damage. Players can also use an avoid ability to avoid taking damage. When a player is attacked by a Badnik, their spending step is not over. They may use that same die or any other die to spend. And we can see that there are good reasons to get rid of Badniks when they are in our play area. We can see if we had a Moto bug that anytime we spend a die, we must lose a die of any color if there are no blue dice in your dice pool. If we had a neutron, our blue dice would lose their ability to not be re-rolled. A buzz bomber makes it so that rings cannot be saved at a star post. And with a chopper, if you complete a zone card, replace your act board reward with a hazard die. So to recap the ways players take damage, if on a re-roll, one of those dice match a Badnik card in your play area, if a player has to roll hazard dice and any of those results matches any of the results of your dice pool, or if a player does not spend a die. And what happens after taking damage will depend on if you lost a shield or rings versus what happens if you flip over a life token. If players take damage but do not flip over a life token, they are invulnerable for a moment. What this means is they would not take damage from a hazard die at this point, or from not playing a die during the spending step. But once a player does spend a die, re-rolls, or ends their turn, the invulnerability moment ends. If a player does have to flip over a life token, their current turn is over, so they discard their dice pool, as well as any Badniks they may have. That player does not have to draw a time token for ending their turn this way. Once a player completes a zone card and there's nothing to replace it, we move into the boss fight. So flip the act board over to the boss side, then deal out boss pattern cards. When we look at the boss level, we see that it is 2. So after removing the remaining zone cards, in this example, deal out 2 boss pattern cards along each route. Next, place an animal token on each health spot. Then give the boss attack card to the player whose turn it currently is. Make sure it is on side 1. That player places the card in their play area, regardless of how many Badniks they already have. To defeat a boss, boss pattern cards are played like zone cards. Each card has a single challenge. Just like zone cards, you may play a die on any available path. Once a boss pattern card has been cleared, it does not go to a player, instead it is discarded. There are 2 paths to choose from. The difficult to clear path, which requires a certain number and certain color, or the easy to clear path, which comes with a penalty. In this example, if you chose the easy clear, you would draw a Badnik card for yourself and of course one other player if possible. Once all the boss pattern cards for one route have been cleared, the boss is open to attack. To attack, place a die of that color and number on the attack space. and it stays there until the end of their turn. That player then takes one animal token to indicate that the boss has been hit once. So, if on their turn more than one route was cleared, that player could place one die on one route, hitting the boss once, and place another die on the other route, which would fully defeat this boss. So each space can only be used one time each on the current player's turn. If, by the end of their turn, the boss has not been hit by the current player, play simply passes on to the next player. However, if the boss has been hit this turn, then at the end of turn step, refill the boss pattern cards. So fill any empty gaps and shift all other boss pattern cards to the left so that a new boss pattern card could be placed to the right. And now each route has the number of boss pattern cards indicated on the boss board. Meanwhile, the boss attack card is acting like a Badnik card and have effects just like Badnik cards. So for example, after rolling our dice, Sonic would discard the lowest numbered die, and Egg Robo says to discard a die with the highest result on the dice action, which comes at the end of the roll action step. We can see that Egg Robo will attack just like a Badnik, so the player would take 1 damage in this case, but we are also able to attack them. So if you spend a die to attack the boss attack card gets flipped over, and if a boss card is attacked, all of its abilities and attack are ignored for the remainder of the current turn. At the end of the current player's turn, the boss attack card gets passed on to the next player, who places it in their play area, and then takes their turn in helping to defeat the boss. If at any point during the game, any one player flips over their final life token, all players lose. And all players lose if all time tokens are removed. But if the final animal token of the boss is removed, all players win. And although all players may have won against the boss, you may still wish to add up a final score. For endgame scoring, players are awarded points based on their speed. To determine a player's speed, each zone card they have is worth 3 speed, so we have 9 speed here, and each time token is minus 1 speed, so Sonic altogether has 7 speed. And of course, Amy has 6 speed, so Sonic has more speed. Now Sonic gets 100 points and Amy gets 0 points in a 2-player game. In a 3-player game, the person who came in first gets 150 points, second 50 points, and third 0 points. And in a 4-player game, the person in first gets 200 points, second gets 100 points, third gets 50 points, and fourth gets 0 points. If there is a tie, the players receive the points awarded for the lower of the 2 spaces they would occupy. So in this case, this is a 3-player game. It is clear who is in third place, so the ones tied for first and second place would both receive points for second place. In this case, each player would receive 50 points. When playing Sonic Roll as a single-player game, points are awarded based on how many time tokens the player took. If you took 0 time tokens, award yourself 200 points. 1 to 2 time tokens, 100 points. 3 to 4 tokens, 50 points. And if you took 5 or more time tokens, 0 points. Next, players gain 10 points per ring they have, both saved and held. So Sonic would add 70 points to his score. Next, animal tokens are worth 20 points each, so Amy adds 40 to her score. Next, death tokens are worth minus 30 points, so Knuckles must subtract 60 points from his final score. And finally, Chaos Emeralds. Unexhausted Chaos Emeralds are worth 50 points. Exhausted ones are worth 20 points. So Sonic altogether adds 70 points to his final score. Thank you for joining me to learn Sonic Roll. Have fun!